I'm really glad I didn't get Atomic Heart and I got Hogwarts instead.
Yeah, no, you should be. Again, Atomic Heart I liked because it was free, obviously, because Game Pass.
Yeah.
So
I could just play it on Game Pass, but then I got to play it on all the consoles.
yeah, like playing it when it came out, because a load of people were like having problems with it. I went on it now and I'm having a few bugs and stuff. But when I like played through it like immediately when it came on Game Pass, I had no issues running through the entire game.
Question, Lincoln.
Go on.
Why is game so horny? Because that's all I've seen, right? Is the ballerinas I kind of get, because when the trailer, I was like, oh damn, sick in it. Why the vending machine?
Oh, the vending machine. I'm like literally
The
basically.
vending machine like talks dirty too. She's like, oh my god, you could upgrade your red.
You
She's
should have.
just a red vending machine. She's like, you could upgrade your red pocket rockets.
Yeah, you should have seen it when I was sitting there and Sandra had walked in after waking up and I'm there upgrading my stuff and she's just there like, I can't wait for your big manly hands to grope my interfaces again. And Sandra's like, what are you playing? I'm like, it's Atomic Heart, I swear.
And it's like that whole bit where she's like, I just want to see it. And she's like wrapping her shit around you. I was like,
Well, it's supposed to be that all of the like robots and stuff have gone insane basically because of some guy hacking them. There's a bit more deep lore to it, but
I watched G-Man Live's video on it. And it was like they have a whole conversation about homosexuals in the fucking game.
Yeah. It's like again, like there's two. The thing is, that's that studio's first game because they were like, we want to make something that rivals AAA, and for graphic wise and like how the game plays, they really hit the mark. Story wise, it's pretty good. Like when I got to my ending, I was there like, oh, I got tricked, but that was mainly because I was playing it on the hard difficulty, and I got like the pistol, the starting axe, and the starting shotgun, and they were there like, you can only really carry 3 weapons. You can carry all of them, but you have an inventory space.
Sure.
So I was like, all right, cool. I'm only going to be using the starting pistol because it doesn't use ammo. It uses an energy bar at the bottom. I'll use a shotgun as my actual ammo weapon. I've got melee because I've been using telekinesis this entire time of like throwing them all up in the air, then pulling the pistol and going bam, 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 and slamming them down like Darth Vader if he had a pistol. But I had fully upgraded them, and I was just there like, oh, I literally don't need anything. And so I got to the final boss. Then the final boss, I was there like, I really should have took an RPG, but I had completed the game, and I was like, fuck, I got tricked because I was supposed to be going to all of the other like side objectives to upgrade weapons. But I did one side objective, and they were like, right, you got a fully upgraded pistol, a fully upgraded shotgun, and a fully upgraded axe. You could get the upgrades for all of the other weapons. So I was like, no, I'm not using them. And I'm there like, oh, I should have. I would have got more lore. But
okay, yeah.
you would have got more lore and understood more of the story.
I was just play it again, Lincoln.
Well, that's the thing. I am playing it again.
Right, okay.
I'm going through it the second time to like and trying out a different build because they were there like. One thing I thought that was good, you could sell off all of your abilities and put all of the abilities back. You could sell off all your abilities and then buy brand new abilities and get new weapons. And I don't think that they reduced how much your materials were. So it's not like you would have less and less materials doing it. They were there like recommending you do it to try out different builds. Again, I was too busy, like I'm having too much fun throwing people up in the air and shooting them while they're there and then throwing them back down to swap all of the stuff. But on my second playthrough, I'm now going with like this build that is like I apply this sort of like foam on people, and it's like now they can take more elemental damage. Or I like foam up the floor and then ice it so the robots go forward and they get stuck in the ice because they just insta freeze. And they're like, haha. But I'm there like, what am I going to use as new weapons now? Because they got the plasma weapon, the AK-47, as they would. It's supposed to be future Russia, and you can't beat the AK-47.
Well, it's viable, isn't it? They probably aren't making new ones. It's just the old ones back from whenever they started making them.
That's what I've heard is that once you sort of find your own play style with the combat and you start like actually unlocking shit, you can have fun with it. But apparently the first few hours it's just basic.
Yeah, it's like Bioshock when you first get like Shock and Hammer. You basically walk up to bots and they run up to you, you shock them, you hit them on the head, they go, oh, now I'm going to uppercut you. The only thing that's weird is there's not that much music for the combat.
I've heard that's not an issue. Well, I've heard it's not an issue because it's not like there's silence because I've heard that the characters won't shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no. A lot of people are complaining about it. I just kind of glossed over it because a lot of people are there like, wow, this main character is so annoying, and I'm there like, it's kind of cringy. But I'm just taking a guess of what it is. Is that in Russian because it's supposed to, I think it's developed by
Yeah, it's supposed to be played in Russian.
yeah, in Russian it probably translates in a different way, so it makes more sense. But they just gave it to the English translator, and they were there like, right, this is what they said. We'll put it in.
Do you reckon they even actually got a translator, or do you reckon they choose like Google Translate and passed it to a voice actor on like Fiverr and said, "Go"?
An example I can give you, because you got like the horny vending machine and stuff. The example I can give you of like dialogue between them is him being there like the first scene you're there, you're on like some boat, you're going into the area, and he's like, wow, like every time that I've come here, it's always been so beautiful. This is the establishment of this area, sir. Of course it's beautiful. Can it, glove? And I'm there like, oh, okay.
The line I
He
heard
just
was,
started off very
the
aggressively
line
with
I
his
heard
glove.
was, I don't give a wet fart about what you think.
The other
It's a
one,
grown man saying this, man.
the other thing that he says a lot, they gave him a catchphrase, and I want to know what it actually supposed to be. Is supposed to be in Russian, because every time like something bad happens, he's like crispy critters, and I'm there like, yeah, it's just that. So it's like he'll be like thrown up against the wall, and he's like crispy critters, flies out the window.
What?
Like a dragon Ishin.
Oh, that's come out as well, hasn't
But
it?
yeah, so he was like, oh yeah, I was getting absolutely bullied by this boss, and the main character and the glove were having a talk about politics.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. In the final boss, when they're giving like all of the big reveals, they're all just basically like shouting their ideologies at each other like some massive anime outro.
That made way more sense.
Well, have that translated back into English and just see if it comes up as crispy critters. Or...
This was Crispy Critter translated into Russian.
Yeah, now translate the
translate
Russian
that.
back into English.
Yeah.
Because if it just comes up as crispy critters, this is evidence that they've probably
Now it
used
says Crunchy Critter.
crunchy critter.
Wait, so if I look up Atomic Heart Crispy Critter Russian original, maybe we'll find out.
What does crispy critters mean?
What does it mean?
Oh my god,
Yeah.
we wrote a whole article about it.
Because I'm just there thinking to myself, if the actual Google Translate's coming in with crunchy critters, why would Russians use that as a slang term?
One YouTuber posits it could be a reference to a classic cereal, but it wasn't invented until 1963, 8 years after.
Basically, the answer is we don't know.
You know, this is why I hate looking at things on Google sometimes, because you'll see all these articles. Either they're like, "Oh, you know, this is the answer to your question," and in this case, it's what does crispy critters mean? And it's there. This entire first section is like, yeah, you hear this phrase like 3 dozen times. It could be this. Oh, here's everything you need to know about it, and it's just that one speculation. It's like, oh, maybe the devil will tell us later. That's all you need to know. End of article. I'm like, bruh, like that's a tweet.
Like I wrote articles, and even I still get annoyed whenever I see people doing like stuff like that. Because I'll see whenever like job postings come up, they'll be there like, "Oh, we need you in news," but they're like, "You just write the news articles and give them to us." And they're like, "This is what happens."
Yeah,
stuff like this.
I have a better response from Reddit. And, take this with a pinch of salt. It says, it's a nonsense phrase chosen as an English language replacement for a Russian nonsense phrase, which loosely translates to fucking buys. The point is that it doesn't mean anything. And the cultural difference is that in Russian, there's a tradition of nonsensical profanity. Basically mimetic phrases.
So the equivalent of us saying "holy shit" is all it is, but they didn't put that in.
Maybe not holy shit, because holy shit.
Because it's too much sense.
Like, when people are like, oh, fiddlesticks.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense, isn't it? It doesn't mean anything. This is a fiddlestick.
What I love is that they chose then crispy critters, where they could have been saying, all of these different swear words that we have and stuff.
No, the point is that it isn't a swear word.
Yeah, but I'm saying for the English translation, because a lot of people have heard that and have been there like, what the hell is this? I don't like it. And I'm there like, the English translation literally could have just been there like, oh, right, this is dumb, scrap it, we'll just write this.
But it's the whole
because
thing
again,
of...
as from what you've told me, in Russia that goes down better, because at least in Russia it makes sense. They're like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be like this because in Russia we do this.
Yeah.
In England we don't do that.
But it's the whole thing of technically, even when you're playing a game and you're listening to them speaking English, they're not actually canonically speaking English.
They're still
It's
speaking
just
in
it's
the
just for
language.
you.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
they're in the game, they're actually speaking Russian. It's just so you can understand them.
Oh.
So if they're supposed to be speaking Russian, they would use the nonsensical shit in it.
I guess.
Wait. You fucking
I
bunny.
want to know what it sounds like in Russian then.
Pierogi.
Pierogi.
Labanya pierogi. No. Very good.
But yeah, Atomic Heart, if you were to say to me, how much would I have paid for it and have been there like, yeah, I didn't waste my money, it's about 30 to 40 quid.
That's pretty good.
But I think they're charging it for 65 at the moment as release. So I'm there like, if you saw it on sale for 35 and you bought it and you were there, it's the whole thing of going into it and being like, oh, this is a brand new development team trying their best to make something AAA on the budget of a AA game. And if you're there, like, you come away with it with the feeling of, oh, it's like Doom and Far Cry mixed into one game.
Yeah.
And you're like, that sounds interesting. Then it's worth a buy. If you're there, like, do I buy it on release for the full price of 60 quid? I'm like, no, get Game Pass.
Discussion question. How do you determine the value of a game on whether or not it's like worth it to you?
Okay. I know Liam might have different opinion with me on this.
Good, I want him to say his afterwards.
Well, I think when I see something that says, "Oh, this is a £65 game," like I don't expect the main story to be like 70 hours. That's dumb.
Okay.
I'm expecting the main story to maybe be 20, 25 hours, but I'm expecting that they're like this will be enough content in there to make worth of 70 hours of your time.
Okay.
How I would put that, say like with Sandra. Sandra's bought the Witcher Complete Edition, so all of it for 15 quid.
Okay.
And she's still playing it on like 60 hours in, and she's still not done the final DLC. Of which I said, can you imagine when the game released? I know it released with bugs for people who know this. It released quite buggy. But if it released, working, and you had the base game, the single player story as the base game is about 35 hours with an additional 20 hours of side content. At £60 for a game like that, I'm there like, that's good. Then the next DLC is an additional 15 hours, an additional 10 hours of side content. And then the other DLC afterwards of 20 quid is about 25 hours, Liam? I'd say the main story, depending on what choices you pick, you can have the story go up to 25 hours. The side content is about 20 hours as well.
Sure.
I'm there like, you're paying upwards of nearly 100 quid for around 115 to 125 hours of content.
Yeah.
And that's just one playthrough of a role play game where you can choose, like, you can go all combat, go all magic, go all potions, or do a mix of them. There's all like the different stuff of where once you get into Blood and Wine, you can buy your own house and stuff.
Sure.
So you can, all of the stuff that you've collected getting up to this point, you can now have display of paintings and stuff and where to put them. And I'm there like, that to me feels like when developers are saying that we're putting £60 on a price tag and saying £20 to £25 for each DLC, I'm there like, that's worth it. Because I'm basically paying a pound for an hour of like content.
So that's like good value for you then, £1 per hour.
£1 per hour, yeah. Because again, with like some multiplayer games, if I had spent like 60 quid on Overwatch, like one when it was like, full price release, and I had played it like 2 or 3 matches, and then everyone was like, oh, we're done with this and we're not going to play it, I'd be like, I've been ripped off because I've only played 3 matches from this and paid 60 quid.
Yeah.
And sure, that's not the devs' fault. The devs, have put in enough content in that game.
Sure.
But that's like a good example of being there. Like, if you bought a multiplayer game and only played 3 hours of it, and that was it, you'd be there like, man, I wasted my money on this. So I think it giving me something to do with my time is worth it.
Yeah.
It is debatable, though, on like what would be considered worth time. Because that, for me, when I'm saying that, that's a game of where I'm there like strictly story is the point. However, Doom or Doom Eternal, story isn't strictly the point in that game. So for me, it's more if they're able to make it, give it a reason for it to be replayable.
Yeah, yeah.
So if Doom is like replayable and you go into it on normal difficulty and you're there like, I'm having so much fun with this. Because I know I've seen some game critics of where they were playing Doom and like it's like a good example with Atomic Heart as well, of where you have like a dash or a dodge system.
Mm.
And I'm there like there are two types of players in those games of where you can either you see the attack and you dash to the left and you only use the dodge system when an attack is coming, or you use a dodge system to move around the map as quickly as possible. And I'm there like, I'm the second one of where if like I see 7 enemies and they're all launching attacks, I don't go, oh, I need to wait for the attack to be there. I'm like, do while flicking the stick to shoot people.
Yeah.
So it gives you a reason to go back in to replay it, because every time you go into that arena, you can try something different.
Sure.
So it then needs to have replayability. But in short, £1 an hour, or give me a reason that once the game is off, I can go back into it. But not like a hollow reason. Like, I guess the best way to put it is like, say, like with Assassin's Creed, like a hollow reason to go back into it. Say, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because Odyssey's the best one for it, because they'll be like, oh, you have different choices to affect different parts of the game, but only a few of them are really crucial.
Right.
So if you like saved before those points, you could then go back to them and just then restart it. I feel like that's a hollow reason to like go back through, because Assassin's Creed Odyssey specifically, you can only really play. You can really only play once, and once you've played once, you're there like, I've experienced everything in this game. If you've done all the side content,
Sure. Are there not multiple endings then?
there sort of is.
There
There
is.
is. There's like 3 or 4, but that's what I mean. Like you can save at specific points, and depending on where you have saved, you can go back to those locations.
Considering like that some of those choices that are like big choices that affect the ending are like 30 hours apart.
Yes,
It's a bit of a balling.
it is.
See what you
But
mean, yeah.
but at the exact same time, if you were to play 30 hours and they were there like, oh, you chose, because I know for some of the endings, like the one ending where basically everybody dies, you can save about like 20 hours before that point, and then start from there. But you can already have done all the side content.
Okay, yeah.
Because with Assassin's Creed, because the benefit of having the open world, and they're like, the world's open to you, you can do whatever you want. As long as you know that those key story points, you can just save at that one point and be like, right, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
If anything goes bad now, I'll just go back to revert last save.
Sure. I get what you mean. What about a game like The Walking Dead? Where
Telltale.
Yeah, Telltale game. So I suppose any Telltale game would probably count. And I'm coming from this from a position of not much experience with Telltale games. But my understanding is that most of your choices have an impact.
Yeah.
As to how the story will play out. Do you think that's, a hollow reason in the same way to replay those games? To go and see how your choices affect different parts of the game, or do you think it's different?
No,
I
played Telltale Batman 3 times.
Yeah.
Wolf Among Us 3 times.
The changing of the story though happens like midway through, where you can have an entirely different like sections because of it.
Sure.
My question to you is, can you check up how much Man of Medan was on release?
Man of Medan.
Because it was like 30, wasn't it, Liam?
$30.
$30.
So I can see what it still is on Steam now. Autumn Man. Dead Air.
Because what have they got now? It's Man of Medan.
It's £17 on Steam now.
£17 on Steam.
Unless you want the anthology for season 1, which is £93.96.
That's all 5 games. That's all 5 games.
Oh, okay, right, fine.
Yeah, because it's the reason why I brought that up is that the Telltale series is a continuation of like stories, except the Wolf Among Us. Are they releasing a Wolf Among Us 2, Liam?
Yes.
Yeah. So Wolf Among Us is going to continue, but you've got all of the other Telltale series where it's basically like watching a TV series.
Yeah.
But it's an interactive TV series that you can obviously play with.
Yeah.
And get different endings. Some TV series and like box sets and stuff will sell for like 30 or 40 quid. So I'm there like, those games selling for around about that price makes sense as well.
Okay.
But also, when you get into those sort of Telltale games, when they're done really well, you are going into a fandom as well.
Yeah.
So I'd say they're more worth 30 to 40 quid.
Sure.
That'd be my takeaway from it.
Go on, Ian. What determines the value of a game for you?
Quality, usually.
Just
I
quality.
find the price does help sometimes with my enjoyment of games, because I play games that are absolute jank that I bought for like a tenner on sale.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is fun. But I don't think the whole £1 per hour thing holds up for me. Because I bought Guardians of the Galaxy full price. And I was like, well, that's about 60 quid.
Okay.
And that was 20 hours maybe, I think I spent on it.
Yeah.
I haven't gone back to play it yet, mostly because Reese is playing it. He's trying to. But I haven't gone back to play it yet, but I don't feel cheated out of my money because it was only 20 hours, because it was a really good experience.
Sure.
I don't know. For me, it's mainly because I played some really short games that I paid like 30 odd quid for.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will go back and play them, not because there's anything replayable about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like this one I bought was like What Remains of Edith Finch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 2-hour game.
Yeah.
I paid 15 quid for it.
Yeah.
But I played it like 5 times because it's so short. There's nothing replayable about it. It's the same thing every time you play it.
Yeah.
It's just like a walking simulator type thing. But I just really liked it. So I played that through loads of times.
Just to experience it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to start a debate with you on that.
In conclusion, Lincoln wrong.
I want to start a debate with you, Liam, on that.
No.
You're saying if you go to the toilet, right? I'll say it to you, Dom.
Okay.
His point on what was it that he prefers the quality of it.
Sure.
My statement on that is quality is supposed to come from it anyway. It's the product. Like unless you're buying something cheap, like if you were to go off and buy a car, and they're like,
Okay.
we're gonna it's 80 grand for this car. You're like, oh cool. What am I paying the 80 grand for? And they're like, you're paying for the quality of BMW. Would you be there like, that makes sense. I'm paying 80 grand for the quality of BMW. Or would you also be there like, mate, you're making the car. I do expect it to be quality, especially if you're charging me 80 grand.
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, actually, and an interesting sort of what's the word when you're likening something to something else?
Well, you're asking the wrong person.
Analogy.
Analogy.
Interesting analogy. And the reason I think it's an interesting analogy is because you can also buy cars secondhand, much like you can games.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the brand new car market, yes, you expect a certain level of quality, but there's also features, which I would liken to the quality of story. So BMW will sell you an 80 grand car, which is probably actually far less than any car they would actually sell you.
Of course.
But they sell you that car and it comes with adaptive cruise control. It comes with, a built-in sat-nav system, all the links to your phone. It comes with like the hands-free, probably comes with seat warmers, maybe a massaging seat. Maybe you get extra performance out of the car, which, you hope one is tracking it for to get the most value out of.
Of course.
That is what gives you that quality. That's what gives you that extra value for the money that you're spending. Whereas you go to another manufacturer, go to a Ford or a Kia or a Toyota, and they sell you a car for 18 grand, and it has some of these same features. It doesn't have adaptive cruise control, but it has cruise control.
Mm-hmm.
You can still link your phone to it, and it still gets you from A to B. So now you're talking about the difference between, your 15 grand car that gets you from A to B compared to your 80 grand car, which also gets you from A to B.
But has a bunch of other stuff in it.
Yeah, it just has extra quality of life stuff. So at that point, you're talking about whether the value of the quality of life stuff is worth it to you.
That's true. But then at the exact same point where you're likening it to like the 15 grand car and it goes from A to B.
Yeah.
If game is just game for you to go off and enjoy, why would you spend £60 on a game if you can also spend £20 on another game that is like it?
Yeah, it's a good question.
That's why I'm
sure
there.
I would.
That's why I'm there. Like in terms of the pound per hour is only like an example for devs to be there. Like if you're going to be charging me 60 to 70 quid for a game,
Yeah.
I don't want to come into like. There's one game that came out recently. I think it uses the CryEngine, and we all know that the CryEngine is
Yeah.
very good. In that it might be called Bright. You play as a woman that has like time powers and stuff.
Oh yeah, I had that on my wish list.
Yeah.
PlayStation.
Do you know how long that game is? 15 hours. They sold it, and it's got the best graphics that you will ever see, and really good gameplay. They sold it because it was only like I say 15 hours generously. I think some people completed it in 10.
Okay.
They sold that for 25 quid, even though its graphics rival that of AAA games. So that's what I mean. Like, for example, Atomic Heart, where I was saying, don't buy it for the full 60 quid because it's not worth it, is because if you're like me, you'll complete it in 14 hours and be there, like, I was a good one. And then you might go back to it like I'm doing. But if you're there like, oh, I'm never going to go back to it once I've played the game once,
Sure.
then it's not a game that you should be spending 60 quid on.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm saying, like, the example of, like, because again, Atomic Heart is quality. The graphics, if you've seen the trailers, it does look like that. I have a 1080p monitor. We'll say it's 1080p monitor.
Sure.
Yeah. And it doesn't do HDR. But when I was playing it, I was just there, like, it went from the one cutscene of where he's lying on the floor, he gets up, he reaches his arm out, brings the axe towards him, and the, like, cinematic bar, we'll call it, just went wider, and it was there, like, gameplay. And I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's impressive. I've been actually watching gameplay this entire time. They might have, like, when they, like, you're going through, like, the, like, sky bit where they're like, here's the map. They might have, like, upscaled it then, because there is a loading screen, like, between that and that bit.
Sure.
But at the point after that loading screen where you're on the floor and it's showing the glove, I was like, wow, that's really good graphics. And then they, like, got rid of the cinematic bar, and I was like, oh my god, that's the gameplay. But again, I wouldn't have spent 60 quid on the game. I would have been very disappointed. So again, with the Dead Space remake, it's about 65 it was released for. And I'm there like, I'll wait until it's about 45 because I know I'm going to complete that game because I basically know it in and out in about 18 hours.
50 quid on Steam.
50 quid on
Dead
Steam.
Space.
Ooh,
Yeah.
it's going down.
Maybe I don't know what it released for on Steam, but it seems reasonable. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Any rebuttal?
What? There's no right or wrong answer, is there?
Well, no, I know.
Well, no, not really.
In my opinion,
It's just for me. I don't think how long the game is for me. It's not a massively important factor. Obviously, if they take the piss with it, and I pay 60 quid for a game and it's like 5 hours, like if I bought Order 1886 on release, I would have been fuming.
Oh yeah.
That I understand. Yeah, I understand that
But
it needs to be.
Order 1886 does have good gameplay. That's why I'm saying in terms of. That's why my point with Dom was like quality is what you kind of expect from the product anyway. If the game should be good and should be enjoyable. Sure, everyone has their own taste, but again, I'm taking a guess you played Order 1886 and you were there like, hey, this is good for its own merits. But if they were there like, hey, would you want to spend 60 quid on it? You'd be like, no.
For me, it's the lower I pay for a game, the more lenient I am with how quality the game has to be. So, I just bought Werewolf Apocalypse. That game is as basic as it gets. It's
Okay,
literally you just
scenarios.
you just go raise stealth, and then you get into a combat room, turn into a werewolf. Heavy metal starts playing. You kill everyone, yeah. And it's like light RPG elements. You can talk to people in like your hub area, and it's like graphic wise for a PS5 game, it's like early PS4 graphics. Like it's not a very good looking game. It's not a very doesn't do anything interesting on you. But I paid a tenner for it, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Like because I don't know. It's like time doesn't really factor too much into it for me because I played some games that are really long, and I've sort of played it out of obligation because I'm like I paid for it. I need to finish it.
Sure,
I
But
finished it, and I'm like, this was why.
yeah.
in those games though, where they're like, oh, they're quite long, but I'm going to play them because I'm obligated to because I paid. Did you pay full price for them?
Yeah.
Is that probably a reason why?
But that's what I mean. Is like I didn't play it, finish it, and go, oh well, that was 40 hours of my time. I feel like they really earned that £60. I'd be like, fuck me, that was 40 hours of dog shit. I'd rather pay 20 quid for that.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying that the quality aspect of it should be automatically in there, isn't it? You're saying basically that you didn't really enjoy that one game, but you spent 60 quid on it, so you felt obligated to play it because it was 60 quid, and you had to go through 40 hours of it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if I had paid 60 quid for that game and it was 20 hours of just sheer amazingness, I would have been like, yeah, fine.
Yeah, sure. But it wasn't sheer amazingness. But if it was 20 hours of nothing more than dog crap, which is apparently what you've been playing, I don't think dog crap was your words, but I'm going to use that anyway, then you would be even more livid.
Yeah.
Because you had spent 60 quid on it. Time is all I'm using as an aspect. From like reviewing games and stuff, I've been there like, oh, if I'm playing a game and like the game's charging somebody 60 quid, I'm there like, for like, let's say like a roguelike like Hades. Somebody's there like, Lincoln, I've played a lot of roguelikes. Hades, I've been hearing good stuff on. You've played it. How long is it? I'd be there like, oh, you've got some good stuff in there. You could play that for upwards of 30 to 50 hours of game. How much is it to get to the end of the story? And I'm like, till credits roll? 20. To get the secret ending, probably 35. And I feel like what I'm trying to say in terms of like the time aspect of it is, if the game is enjoyable and you find out there's 35 hours of gameplay in it, then you know how much of your money that you're willing to part with.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if like, again, with Fallout 3, you could probably complete Fallout 3 in like speedruns. Speedruns will give you a better idea, but you can probably complete Fallout 3 in like 15 to 20 hours. But they put enough side content in there to make it more enjoyable. The same with like Frostpunk. Probably Dom and I have done all of the scenarios, and it probably took us like 15 hours to do them.
There's a website for that.
For what?
How long to complete games?
Yeah, I'm on it. How long to beat?
Is that the same website?
Well, it shows me how long to beat everything in my Steam library.
Oh, yeah. No, it's when we like type in specific games. And
oh yeah, sure.
Anyway, it's 10:05.
Yeah, we've been recording content this entire time.
Well, not the topic we were talking about.
It doesn't matter, does it?
Doesn't matter, as long as we have topic.
Content. That's content.
That's Dom's problem when he has to think of titles.
Yeah. Good point, actually, yeah.
We'll have to think of a title for it.
Well, the title's probably going to start with Atomic Heart Ramble.
Yeah.
Something like that, I don't know. We'll come up with something.
Yeah, but that's just it. Whenever I've seen games when they try to sell something, like again, like you see like somebody be like, this is an indie game and it's like 5 minutes, like a 5-minute indie game, but they're charging it for £3. If it was really good, then yeah, Leon's point stands, because it's there like it's absolute quality. For £3, it's good. It's just the difference of nowadays when they're trying to like say games are trying to sell you £70 games on full release. I'm there like that's why I'm saying time is a bit of a different factor then.
Sure.
Because if you're spending 70 quid on a game and it only lasts for 12 hours, it doesn't matter how much quality that 12 hours is. You just drop 70 quid on it.
Yeah.
And sure, like depending on different like class brackets and how much money that people are earning, sure. But it's still like you have to think of the like we'll see like the average population. Some people are going to come in and be there like, they might have like saved up money for this. They ask you, is it worth it? And you say to them, it is like a really good game. It's quality. And they go, yeah. And they drop 70 quid on it and they complete it in 12 hours. It's just one day. They just drop 70 quid on it. They might be there like, oh.
The other thing I'm going to say is that not necessarily one day for most people.
Oh, yeah, it's not one day for most people. That might be over the course of 3 days.
Sure.
3, maybe 5 days. But you still might come away from it and be there like, oh, that it? That's the game done now? Because again, with Hogwarts Legacy, it's probably about 30 to 40 hours to beat. But then they have the fact of different characters, so you can play it in different houses to find out the different, like, get all of the different cosmetics, all of the different
My
stuff.
thing is then, because I find, and I don't know if you find this as well, Dom, games seem a lot longer for us, because I can now only play them in the evenings, even though I've only put, say, 5 hours into a game. Because I've been playing it over the course of a few evenings, it feels a lot longer to me. Do you think games feel shorter for you just because you play them all in one day?
Well, probably. Because again, with Atomic Heart, I was basically there like, I'm not going out today. I'm not going off to do anything else. I'm going to dedicate my time to Atomic Heart. I woke up at 7 and couldn't get back to bed. So I was there like, you know what? It's out. I'm just going to play it. So I got on it at 8. and just played it and just didn't stop.
Mhm.
And that's what I mean by the fact that some people who might have been there like that. Because Dom, you booked off time for Cyberpunk, and then it was delayed. Yeah, you booked off time for Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Could you imagine you booked off time for Cyberpunk? It was 65 quid that you put onto it.
Mhm.
Bugs withstanding. You got into the game. You
Mhm.
played 10 hours of it,
Mhm.
and then it was done. They were there like, well done. This is the credits. You beat the game. Would you not be there like, you booked a day off for this game? Would you not be
Sure.
there like, oh, that's shocking. I didn't expect it to be done so quickly.
I would, but I'm going to make a point here that the question was, how do you value a game for you? It's a personal thing, right?
Oh yeah, true. But I would also
So-
throw out that when I messaged Liam being there like, I completed the game in 12 hours, that he went, oh, that's shocking. So it's not that long then. And then was there saying today that he's glad that he got Hogwarts Legacy instead. They're both put at the same price.
Sure.
One game is longer, one game has more nostalgia for him, and one game seems to be more enjoyable.
Sure.
The reason I was shocked that Atomic Heart was that short is just because of how much hype it's been getting, and people talking about, oh yeah, you can play it like, they're like, oh yeah, you play it how you want. There's all these like areas to explore. I thought it was going to be longer. The way they talked it up, if they were like, oh yeah, it's a linear like first person shooter experience,
It's not that linear.
I've been like, all right, but they're like, oh yeah, explore futuristic Russia, go out, do your own thing. I thought it would have been longer.
Again, so I'm saying, like, there was the 4 or 5 other dungeons that I didn't go to because I didn't want to upgrade my guns. Because I was like, I'm not going to upgrade the rocket launcher. I'm not going to go to this area where they're like, go here and do these puzzles and fight these enemies to get the rocket launcher handle upgrade because I'm not using it. So I didn't go off to do it. So again, that game might be 20 hours to get all of it.
I
But-
think for me it's expectation then as well, because again they were talking like, oh, this game's like, it's go out and go off, explore, do side missions, everything like that.
Mhm.
And then Lincoln being like, oh yeah, beat it in 12 hours. I was like, what you on about, like an open game like that? But it's the same as like, Hogwarts Legacy. If I, that's a big open world game. If I've been playing that and I was like, oh, I beat the main story in 10 hours,
Mhm.
I'd be a bit like, come on now. But if I knew I was paying £60 for a linear experience like I was Guardians of the Galaxy, and I knew that was going to be short, and to be fair, it was 15 to 20 hours, I think.
Hmm.
I'm not going to be disappointed with that because I knew what I was getting.
Sure.
That's true.
If I look at this game and people are all talking about, oh yeah, it's going to be like this, it, I'm like, oh wow, okay, cool. And then I buy it and I'm expecting this like big, vast, open experience and everything like that. And I play it and I finish it in 10 hours. Then I'm going to be pissed. Not because I'm like, oh, I played 10 hours, what the hell? But because I was like, I was expecting more because of what's been marketed to me.
Mm.
It's been marketed as a big, grand experience. I played 10 hours and it's over.
Yeah.
Then I'd be annoyed.
Yeah.
If I know I'm going in for like a linear experience that's probably going to take me 10 hours to complete, and I've dropped 60 quid on it, but it's a good, because that's the thing, Atomic Heart might be a really good experience.
It really is a good experience.
So like, if I knew that it was like 10, 15 hours to finish, but I knew it was a good experience, and I went into it knowing it was going to be a shorter game, I wouldn't have been bothered.
Mm.
But it's just the way it's been marketed as like this big next level game. Like everyone's so hyped about it, like the next tier of gaming, like,
Yeah.
and then they're like, their whole thing was, play it how you want, explore how you want. I'm like, oh, that sounds really good. And then, yeah, if I finished it after 10 hours, I'd be like, oh, what the hell? Like,
It does have all the elements that you're talking about. Because again, I just completed it quite quickly. That's why I'm there saying, like, that's what I'm saying, like,
so do you think it's just a you issue then?
it could be. You might play it, like, again, I think you might play it, it might take you 16 hours.
'Cause-
One review I watched for it, the guy said it takes you 24 hours to beat, and he said that he didn't do all of the side content. And that's what I mean, like, I heard that it took him 24 hours to beat, and I looked at Sandra and was there like, took him 24 hours. I did it in 12. But again, I got it through Game Pass and was there like, that was a good experience. I'm going to go back onto it and, play it like a few different times.
Mhm.
But I've seen some people in the comment sections being there like, this game's bad for all of these different reasons. And that's why I'm saying a game being worth it for me to buy when I'm using the time as the example. I'm using it more as the idea of when you're critiquing the game. If Dom said to me, here's 60 quid for a game, trust it's worth, and I bought it and completed it in 10 hours, I'd be like, Dom, it was a really good experience, but why didn't you tell me it was 10 hours? And him be there like, it is quality though, isn't it? Like, I'd be like, yeah, but I just dropped 60 quid on it. Again, with like God of War Ragnarok, 60 quid for God of War Ragnarok is a really good deal. If
70.
God of War 70,
Yeah.
60 quid for God of War Ragnarok is a good deal. No game is worth 70 quid at this point. I promise you.
But it's the whole thing of, is it you, because you only measure games like that.
Not just that. I am taking into the fact that, like when I recommended Dom Moonlighter, I did take into consideration all of the different elements of it. Dom said he likes games with trading aspects into it. I went, Moonlighter is dungeon delving like Zelda with a trading aspect into it afterwards. I have done the first dungeon. It's taken me 4 hours. There is 4 dungeons in it, as far as I was concerned, until Dom told me more, because he's played more of it than me. It was like 15 quid, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And Dom has been enjoying it the entire time. But my aspect of it was when I looked at it and I had paid £15 for it, and I've played 4 hours of it, and I was like, it's a really good time. I could estimate that it was probably going to be worth that amount of money, so I recommended it to Dom to buy. If Moonlighter was charging 60 quid for its game, I would not have recommended it at all. It's the same with like people being there like, recommend God of War Ragnarok. Some people be there like, God of War Ragnarok is a really good game. They bought it for 70 quid on release. Do they recommend it? They'll be there like, yeah, really good game, really changed my thinking of life and stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I really love this aspect of it and its story. I'm like, cool. What price do you think that I should wait for it to drop to that you feel like it's worth it? And some people at that point will agree with the time aspect of it. They'll be there like, well, the game is 40 hours long. So if you're thinking that if it's a really good quality experience and you're thinking 40 quid is too much for it, you're wrong. That is that's well above like the bracket of it. It is worth it at that point. It shouldn't drop lower than that, in my opinion. But some games like Atomic Heart, because they're so short, and they're like their price margin is not worth the same as God of War Ragnarok. It's worth less because it's a shorter experience.
Sure.
God of War Ragnarok and Atomic Heart should not be put at the same price level. I feel like sometimes I feel like devs are reaching for it, because sometimes you'll see games of where they're like, hey, this game is out. It's worth 50 quid because it's brand new. We put all of this stuff into it. Here's the game. And the game comes out and it's not good and it's really short. And I'm like, not worth it. So that's why for me, time is a crucial thing. Because I'm there like, if the game's going to take me 40 hours to beat, I'm more than willing to part with money. That's the point I'm making. Wait for it.
Not to get too thing into it, Lincoln.
Cool.
Do you think... What's wrong with that?
Cool.
Do you think if you had a job, that would be different? Just because, like I
No.
said, if you're because at the moment when you play games, obviously you're like, I can sit down for a whole day and just play a game.
I would put it on the fact that, like I said, with Atomic Heart, I literally set the day aside for it. So I feel like even with having a job, if I was there like, hey, yo, I'm going to book the day off to play Atomic Heart, and boss was like, yeah, sure, book that day off. Play that game to your heart's content. And I completed it in the full day, but I knew I had dropped 60 quid on it. I'd still be there like, what the hell? Because it's still the thing of you spent money on it. It's like going to a concert and then they're like, here's £120 for the tickets. The act comes up. Ronnie Radke comes on stage. He sings one song and he's just like deuces and leaves. You would be like, what the hell?
That's the thing I was going to ask you is, do you believe, in your eyes then, a concert's even worth it? Because say I dropped 60 quid on a ticket.
How many songs?
Well, no, let's even go for... I'm going to use your metric. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, how many songs are they doing, right?
Yeah.
That's not the metric I'm going to use. I'm going to use your metric of £1 an hour, right?
Yeah.
If we drop 15 quid to go to a concert, it's 2 hour concert. you can't even go back and replay it. You can look at videos, but you can't go back and experience as you did. Is that even worth it to you then?
I would say that the concert is a different experience because you're actually going up to meet the people.
Here's another thing I'm going to say.
I say meet them.
Two things, actually. One, in terms of if you make this a broader question and you go entertainment value, in my opinion, video games are by far the best value.
Yeah.
But also there are other costs to consider.
Mm.
So the concert, you spent £15 on the ticket, you spend an amount of money on travel. That's it.
Yeah.
Basically, that's all you'll spend. For video games, you spend an amount of money on the game, an amount of money on the console, which you divvy up based on the amount of time that you play it for. Pay an amount for electric.
Paying your
And that's
time,
about it.
paying your time as well.
Paying your own time.
Yeah, because there's
I'm not doing that in either scenario.
Yeah, true.
If I start paying my actual time into both scenarios, then they just weighs each other out. I think. Like if I pay myself to be at a concert.
Oh no, I mean as in like if you go to a concert and you're spending £100 on the ticket to go see Slipknot.
Yeah.
And you're like a massive fan of Slipknot, and you love the actual concert atmosphere and stuff.
Mm.
Like where Reese says he goes to the gym for the atmosphere. Go to the concert. You go to the concerts for the atmosphere to meet people, and you have that really good time there. That's a difference because you're going there for like the event and stuff.
Yeah.
If we're looking at games as the same, if you're going there for the event, then Overwatch is an example of that. An event, a single player linear game is not the exact same example. So I guess that's a better thing of what I'm saying. If it's a single player game, and they're there like it's 5 hours, they can't charge people 60 quid for it, no matter how much quality is in it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 40 hours, then I'm there like, ooh, that's a bit like better. You can understand why they're now charging 60 quid, and that's in short for the people that like take my criticism and reviews on games. It's just knowing that if I've played a game and they're like, is it worth it? And I go, it's worth it at 60 quid. Buy it. I'm telling you that game is next level generation stuff that you need to go off and get it. If I'm there like, wait for it to drop to 40 quid, I'm there like, it's worth about 40 quid. And cause it'll probably be like a 20 to 30 hour game. If I'm saying like for Atomic Heart, I'm like, wait for it to drop to like 20 to 30. I'm telling you, it's about 15 hours. My God. Don't drop 60 quid on it. It's not that worth it.
Sure. I think for me, going back to video games specifically now, it's a combination of time and quality. So, but when I'm talking about quality, I'm not measuring like graphics or anything.
No, yeah.
I think of quality as purely gameplay and fun, maybe replayability as well. So, we talked about Moonlighter, £15. Honestly, I think they could charge more for it because it's fun. You can just keep playing it and playing it and playing it, and actually progression doesn't matter if you just enjoy like slashing away at dungeons.
Yeah,
you could just keep playing that game. So you've got a replayability factor in it. There's challenge to it. The story is of a good quality or good enough anyway. The graphics are all 2D, so I'm not measuring that against it. Like it's good quality 2D graphics, but to me, it just doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So the amount of hours that I put into it, which is a number, don't know actually. Probably about. I'm going to look it up. Actually, I'm going to look it up. Let's make this point.
You're going to go on your Steam library to check.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think graphics ever play a massive thing in the pricing of a game for me.
I would agree with that because of like Horizon and stuff.
Yeah.
Horizon, God of War, like a lot of those games. God of War being a good example of if the graphics were downscaled, it would still be a good game.
Yeah.
If they just kept all of the mechanics in it, the graphics being as good as they are is just like a testament to the hardware itself.
Speaking of which, the topic that we were going to talk about remakes, that's actually why I dislike The Last of Us remake.
Oh, it's because the graphics changed?
Because that's all it is.
Yeah. It's a graphic up.
That's all it is.
Graphic upscale.
Yeah.
That's all it is, and they charged fucking 70 quid for it.
Yeah. But again, like, Last of Us is a 70 quid game with a graphic. Again, like, a graphics upscale, but it's only like 20 hours. And I'm there like, I don't feel like 70 quid is worth it for that game.
I have multiple other issues with The Last of Us remake, but that's...
Yeah.
Then I'll make this point about Moonlighter quick. I put about 18 hours into the game. I actually still haven't finished it. I haven't done that last dungeon, so I'll probably get about
25.
Maybe not 25. Like, I think I'm already pretty high level. but maybe 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 22.
But then,
so
if,
for me,
if I had sold, if that game was 25 quid and I had recommended it to you, you'd still probably feel it's worth it then.
I would have gone up to like 30, 35.
Exactly. That's my point.
And the reason for that, time is an important factor, I think. And I'm definitely not saying that it isn't. It is. But I think for me personally, there's a multiplier on the quality of the story and like the enjoyability of the game. So if I take another example of Watch Dogs Legion, which I thought was a terrible game.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the amount of time that you play into it. I don't remember how much time I put into it. I wish I could look it up. It's not on my Steam.
Oh, is it not?
No, I have it on Origin.
Oh.
If I can find it, I will. But I put an amount of time into it, which isn't, atypical for AAA games, let's say, and I paid full price for the game. I felt very let down because the actual gameplay was dog wank.
Yeah.
And I'm being 100% serious. I think the older Watch Dogs games were actually better, or at least more excusable in that they were, the first generations. Watch Dogs Legion, you have 2 missions basically. If you boil it down into what you actually do, you have fetch quests, and you have the little puzzle where you're rotating the puzzle pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But even those challenges weren't actually challenging, whereas the other games did have a bit of challenge to them. Dog wank game. So if you told me that was like 60 hours and I paid 60 quid for it, I'd still be disappointed. If there was 120 hours of content, I would still be really disappointed.
I guess
it was just trash.
I guess my point with the time thing answers the question. I answered the question wrong, because what I'm trying to say is, where you're saying the game sucks, and they're like, that's bad, so it's not worth it at all.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if the game is good,
if
the game comes out in its quality, it doesn't matter if the quality is only 10 hours, it doesn't justify a price point of 60 quid.
Yeah. I don't think I'm disagreeing with that at all, actually.
I'm just make sure that's clear. Like, I'm not there like saying if a game is 120 hours and they're charging you 120 quid for it, that means that they can be there like, oh yeah, and just put dog rank in it.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
It literally has to still be a quality good game.
Yeah.
But if it's a quality good game but only 5 hours, I will be there like, all right, cool. It's like 20 quid.
Yeah.
That's why I use that Bright one as an example.
Yeah.
Because it's only like 10 to 15 hours to complete.
Yeah.
And they're charging 30 quid for it, but it's AAA graphics and AAA great gameplay. And I think from what I've seen from the reviews that it does push a lot of systems, but it's a Crytek game, I believe. So
yeah,
that's an example of why.
The last thing I'll say then before we move on to remakes, just a little throw in there for the audience. Vampire Survivors, £4 on Steam. I have put 20 hours into the game and the average time to beat is 30.
2D one, isn't it?
It's a 2D one, and I think it's interesting because the actual gameplay is really simple in a way, because you're just roaming around and stuff is just happening. Like, you pick up weapons and your character does stuff.
You only really control the movement in that game.
Yeah, you control the movement of the character. But you also, when you realise it, control the build of the character and start making up different combos and stuff. Game's fun as hell. It's £4.
It's made
if you want to go for like top value game, Vampire Survivors, peak.
It's
not difficult, just play.
It was on Game Pass, and I've been hearing raving reviews about it, and I looked at the gameplay and I was like, what are people on about? And I just went onto it, and I was like, oh my god, I sunk 6 hours into it and realized that I had, and was like, I need to get off this.
Yeah.
Made by one guy who used to work making slot machines, I believe.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so you can see it now in the gameplay, but he basically
100%.
He did it with he understood like how people keep coming back to slot machines and stuff with the flashing lights and all that.
Yeah.
And he applied that into the game when he was making it.
Yeah.
And it's really addictive, but really good. So no, I agree. Vampire Survivors, for how much it is an absolute steal of a game, because it's just good.
Yeah, it's good fun. Even if it was just 1 hour, it would have been worth that £4.
It's the screenshots as well. If you look at the screenshots and you go, I'll pay £4 for it, you are getting a bargain for what it is.
Yeah.
But if you look at the screenshots and you go, this looks mid, then you probably might want to stay away from it. But if you had spent £4 on it and had put 4 hours into it and you were there like, I think I'm done with this for the rest of my life, I'm there like, no, you've spent it well.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
But remakes.
They good or what?
This was supposed to be our original topic, everybody.
Yeah.
In general.
If done right, yeah.
Okay.
If with good reason as well.
I agree with him on that because there's quite a few games that I've been seeing of like they come out with like remakes because the idea is like if remakes, if like remakes coming out now, is that a sign of like like a lack of creativity in like game or like media development and stuff? I don't think so. And using Resident Evil games as the example, the Resident Evil 2 and the Resident Evil 3 remake, including what's coming out now as the Resident Evil 4 remake, are absolute justifications on why old games that really hit well deserve to be remade up to these standards.
2 and 3, I think more so though, because it actually just completely. Because as well, I would say any game that came out
PlayStation 1?
before HD TVs were a thing, a remake of them I don't think is an issue.
Sure.
Because, but basically, like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, they were fixed camera angles, tank controls, and everything like that. And then the remake completely changes it to a third-person camera,
Over the shoulder
Oh,
camera.
over the shoulder camera. So it completely changes the original experience anyway.
Can you change it back to the old way?
No.
Okay, no.
It's because that's a remaster. That's what they did with the Halo Combat Evolved, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I think we should sort of define what the difference is between a remake and a remaster, because I think there's a lot of some people get a bit confused about that.
Sure.
I would say a remaster is anything that takes the original game and just up-reses it.
Yeah.
And just maybe adds some new textures or something like that.
Yeah.
That
like
to me
it
is a
uses
remaster.
it uses the source code, the original source code of that game, and just builds around it. A
Interesting.
remake is where they just build it from the ground up as a brand new game.
They change elements about it that if you had got the two games side by side, they'd be entirely different.
What if they don't use the original source code, but it's a faithful recreation in that they don't actually change any of the core gameplay elements?
Remaster?
Just update the textures. Like, does the source code actually matter?
Not really.
That's a remake. That's still a remake because Crash Bandicoot. The Crash Bandicoot remake. Well, it's not a remaster. That's a remake.
Yeah.
It plays exactly the same as the other ones. It's just they built that from the ground up, and maybe they tweaked. I think they tweaked the physics engine in it. So in that you need momentum to make bigger jumps, but that's like the only gameplay change they made.
Didn't that screw something over with one of the Crash Bandicoot games?
Yeah, it ruined one of the levels. It's like a level. It's like a bridge level where you got to jump from platform
you
to platform.
can't get enough momentum to do a certain jump, so you can't do that unless you hit like all of the jumps perfectly.
Yeah,
making that one specific section really hard.
I think I played that level. It was really difficult. I found a way to jank it. If it's the one I'm thinking of.
Did you
jump on the one?
Yeah. I remember doing that as a kid on the old one.
Because again, the I'm good. There we go. But you saying they don't change any of the gameplay elements. They just it's a faithful recreation. Would you say the new Last of Us remake would be a remaster then by that definition?
I don't know because I don't know enough about it to say.
But it's not.
So the new
they
Last of
market
Us.
They market it as a remake because it is a remake. They've not used the old game.
Okay.
They've made every single asset, they've redesigned everything in it.
Yeah.
Just remade it. They haven't taken the old thing, and it's like if I have a flower pot, yeah, a nice decorative flower pot. It's getting on a bit, bit old, bit gross. You paint over it. I've renewed this flower pot.
You've remastered
I've remastered this flower pot.
Okay, yeah.
If I go off and go, okay, I'm gonna take this pottery class. I'm gonna make a new pot, but I'm gonna make it look exactly like this. That's a remake of the flower pot.
What if you melted down the flower part, assuming it was made of material that could do that, and then rebuilt it such that it looked new but was using the same materials? So the reason that I'm asking this is not because I necessarily have a strong opinion on whether the games that reuse their same source code or not are remakes or remasters. It's more for the audience, actually.
If that's the case,
in terms
then
of
there
how
is no
we
such
are
thing as a
defining them.
remake.
Well, sure there is. Because if you're making changes to the game, then it is a remake because you're changing things, because you're remaking it.
Stories.
So what I'm saying is I think it's important that when we're talking about the games that we're going to talk about, that we define them. And I suppose I think the easiest way of doing that is if we say remaster is, oh yeah, they kept the same source, blah blah blah. Faithful recreation would be they didn't use the same source, but they kept it all the same. And a remake would be where they made the game again, but they made changes.
I would say for me personally, a remake needs to have some form of changes in it.
Yeah.
The Dead Space remake being a good example, because otherwise it would have been a remaster. When they were first showing it, they were like, "Oh, this is Dead Space, exactly how like you remember it." And I was like, "This is a remaster then, because all you've done is upscaled the graphics on a game that was on Xbox 360. Why would I pay money for this?" And now I've been watching Markiplier, I believe, play it, and like I've been watching it and been there like, oh, that section's changed. Oh, that bit's changed. Oh, this is no longer linear. You can go back. Oh, you no longer have a loading screen between these sections. When you get on the tram, you go from this point to this point seamlessly. I'm like, oh, there are enough changes here, and including more side objectives. There's spoilers for anybody that wants to like get this blind. But an example would be if you've played the Dead Space, you know, like his girlfriend and like Isaac Clarke goes back to find his girlfriend and stuff. There are sections now that flesh out more stuff to do with his girlfriend, such as you go into like an autopsy room and there'll be a hologram of her doing an autopsy on basically a necromorph and her going, I need to go to this location to get more information. And where like Isaac Clarke was like, I'm here to look for my girlfriend and fix the ship, and you don't actually look for your girlfriend until a section of where you meet her. This time there's an investigation path for you to get there.
That's cool.
So I'm there like, that to me is a perfect example of a remake. And another good example of a remake I'd say is the Final Fantasy VII one. Because in Final Fantasy VII, I remember going into it, and for spoilers again for Final Fantasy VII remake, like the example I can give is like there's like these ghost things that suddenly appear, because I was like, hey, this is weird, this isn't how the original went, and then these ghost things appear and they like start changing things to make it happen the exact same way that the original happened. And then there's different bits, and like there's an entirely brand new boss fight in it, because I was thinking to myself, oh, like if you played the original Final Fantasy VII, the equivalent of the final boss fight in that is you get on the end of a bridge, you turn around, because it's basically all of disc 1 of the original game. You turn around and this giant robot comes up and he's like, I can't let you leave the city, and like tries to kill you. You blow up the robot, you leave, and you're like, wow, we have an entire world to explore, and you go off. The remake is like you get that section and then something goes wrong and Sephiroth appears, who's like the main bad of the game, and it's like, oh, Cloud, time and fate is trying to stop us from doing this stuff because they don't want things to change. Everything has to be the same, which is supposed to be, I think, a commentary on like fans who are like, they don't want anything of the original to change. But in this remake, they have the characters we'll call team up with Sephiroth at one point, and is there like, oh, we're going to fight against Destiny, and there's now going to be change.
Yeah.
And they're basically like, oh, because we've beaten Destiny itself, anything can happen. And then you fight Sephiroth, and Sephiroth is like you get to like the actual, we'll call the climactic part of Final Fantasy, the original, where you're supposed to fight Sephiroth in like a 1v1 fight. You do the move, but then Sephiroth deflects it and is like, not yet. We have to wait, which is basically them. Which is basically the devs going, no, you don't get the ending now. You got to wait 2 more games to get it. But it's then like
breaking up into 3.
Yeah, because it's 3 discs.
Okay.
So but what they've done with that is they basically gone, oh, because at one point one of the characters in the remake dies, but then the spirits come by and bring him back to life.
Right.
And but it's funny because those spirits bring him back to life because they're like, oh no, like they have to stay to the timeline. He doesn't die here. And basically they're like, when Sephiroth is like, oh, they're like changing things because we have to go to Destiny of where I lose. But are you going to let that happen? And like Cloud and the rest of the Avalanche are like, no, we'll make our own path. And I'm like, but you win at the end. But it's still the fact of now, you got to the end of the game, of the remake, and you're hitting what is now going to be remake part 2.
Sure.
But just before that, a very crucial character in a side story called Crisis Core, you see him at the end being there like, Cloud, where are you? And I'm there like, he's still alive. He dies at the end of Crisis Core. And now, if like they're breaking it up into like 3 games to be with the 3 discs, if that's the case, if they make it 4 games, they're ripping us off. But 3 games, yeah. Now anything is up in the air. And that's why I'm there. Like, that's another good quality of a remake is you're now experiencing the game again with the characters that you know and love, and you're getting that nostalgia element. But it's now something entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
You get to do something new with the game.
Yeah.
So that's my qualities for a remake. If you just give me the exact same thing but graphics upscaled, I'm there like that's a remaster.
Sure.
Regardless of if they built it from the ground up. I'm there like that's still a remaster to me personally.
So the new Last of Us Part 1 then?
The new Last of Us Part 1 is a remaster. They can't call it a remake if all that they've done is made the graphics better.
They put Prone in there. You can go Prone now.
I would say that's not enough.
Change. That's it. No,
I would say that's not enough. Because what they in The Last of Us 2 they had prone, and because all they've done then is they've just gone The Last of Us. It's also really lazy because they've just gone The Last of Us 1 didn't have prone. They then did the remaster of Last of Us 1, which was just a graphic upscale.
Yeah.
Then they made The Last of Us 2, which is controversial in its own right, but they had the prone system in it. And then you're telling me that after that, especially like even like an example of the quality of depth that Naughty Dog went to for The Last of Us 2 is people have been able to decipher. There's a whole combat section of where there's these guys you have to stealth through. And if you take people out, they do whistles. They whistle to each other. And if somebody doesn't whistle back, the AI will audibly go, something's wrong. And they'll investigate the section of where that person went. But they all have different whistles for different codes. And fans have been able to decipher what all of those whistles mean. And I'm like, the devs went to that length for it. And you're telling me for the remaster of The Last of Us Part 1, they added a prone system and now it'd be classed as a remake? No. No. They could have put so much more into this.
That's why I think the whole my classification for remake is that they've made every asset new. Like they've rebuilt it. Like they haven't used any of the old game. They've just made it all again. I think that's what a remake is to me. But that doesn't mean that I agree with it.
Yeah.
Because again, if I was to get a remake of a game that I used to love, the game either has to be stupidly old or it has to be a really good remake that changes a lot of stuff. So like you said with Dead Space. But with like the new Last of Us one, that game's like 10 years old, the original one. So I understand why they did a remaster like a year or two afterwards, because obviously people bought the new consoles, maybe people didn't play it on the other one. But why did that game need a remake? Dead Space I can kind of understand because that was more towards the beginning of the Xbox
360. Yeah.
But like Resident Evil 2 and 3, I get that because they're like ancient games.
18 to 20.
Ancient games.
20
Silent
years
Hill
old.
2 as well.
Yeah.
That's getting a remake.
As again, like those, you can argue that Dead Space should be remade because it was, again, like you said, the beginning of the Xbox era. So that's 2 generations ago.
Yeah.
And again, with the graphic upheaval and the stuff that they've changed, I've been there like, wow, actually, gaming has come quite far. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remake shows how far we've come from PlayStation 1. But The Last of Us, if the only thing that they've changed is the addition of prone, it shows a lack of creativity in the devs. Because are you telling me that's all that changed between The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2? And so they're like, we let you crawl. What? The entire combat system of God of War changed over the course of a console generation. And you're telling me that The Last of Us couldn't have done anything different with a remake?
It's also, I think, the place for me where it gets more important as well is the actual sort of quality of life that we have with games today. And like I've been playing like the last was Part 2, like I know this, the Spider-Man games and everything like that. The accessibility options, ridiculous.
Oh, 100%.
They've got so many. So like for someone to like go back and play like the original Resident Evil 2, it's gonna be difficult for someone who like has difficulty playing games.
Yeah.
But it's like graphics aren't like the be all end all for me. It's nice when a remake comes out, like, oh look, my game, it looks all new and stuff like that.
Or it looks how you remember it.
Yeah. But if I was to play that remake and it had no quality of life improvements. It was just the graphics, and the controls were still ass. I'd be a bit like, well, what was the point? Like, I get it that it looks new, so like adding like quality of life improvements as well, because I think that's another way that it sort of steps up from a remaster. Because I find that remasters, they might have like one quality of life improvement with it, like, oh, this button that used to do this, but it used to be used for all these other things as well. We've changed it to this. Yeah, I'm like, okay, that's decent, liking it, but it's still like the controls are kept the same. Whereas, obviously, Resident Evil. But when that one come out, was that on PS1 or the original Resident Evil?
Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil Raccoon City you're talking about, yeah. So Resident Evil 2. Yeah, those were PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah, they didn't even have analog sticks.
Yeah, I think Resident Evil 3 might have been on the PlayStation 2. But yeah.
Same with there you go, that's a really good example, is the original Spyro game. They remade that. Imagine trying to play a platformer these days with just a D-pad.
Mario fans around the world riot. No, I get what you mean. A 3D platformer, yeah, sure. Would be very difficult.
But no, I just feel like in order for a remake, it has to justify the fact that it's a remake. Like Lincoln said, like with the Dead Space one, apparently I didn't realise they added all that to it. I thought it was just they let Isaac speak in this one. But like you said, they've added like a whole new like side by side of it, like quest line or like new missions and stuff like that you can do.
There's enough changes to it that when if you were going through it blind, you had played Dead Space 1 and you had moved over from Dead Space 1 immediately to the remaster, there's enough changes to it that the person wouldn't be there like, this is the exact game. To give spoilers as an example, in the Dead Space 1, for anyone that's played it, they'll know that the famous scene of you start off, you crash into the ship, you get out of the ship, you walk forward, you press a button, and then the fucking lights go down, and then you see the one guy get stabbed. You'll know that the other person basically dies as well, and then the main other two characters that are with you, it's them. Only one person goes into that room, the other one stays on the ship, so they die in a different section.
Oh, okay.
There's all different reference. Also, another change, if you remember, the necromorph attacks the I forget his name, but the one black guy that's in the on the bridge. He gets attacked by a necromorph and he puts it into an escape pod and launches the escape pod. But people were confused on why he didn't just kill the necromorph. In this one, they're like, the necromorph that attacked him is the soldier that died at the beginning.
Oh, that's cool.
So it adds the motivation to the character of why he didn't kill him, because there's a section where he's there like, I'm not dreaming, is it? That's Chang, isn't it? And it's like, you can't do anything for him. You have to let him go. He's like, okay. And then launches the escape pod, which causes a bunch of problems down the line. But it gave motivation to the character.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, like, that's a good idea of a remake, of where you can see that the devs have played the game and have been there like, I've played the game, I'm going to remake it in a vision, but stick to the original idea, the dream of the game. And it's good.
Do they launch that escape pod into a planet and someone finds it?
They launch it into space, and the again, spoilers, the one rescue crew that they managed to ask for people to come get them, they come along and they're like, oh, we grabbed your escape pod and it has the necromorph in, and it takes out that entire crew.
That was silly.
It was. But again, like in the original, it was just they just launched it out. He didn't open up the pod and they just unloaded into it. Because again, it's an escape pod. They could have just left in it. But they were like, oh no, we'll just do this instead. Because as far as I'm concerned, it makes more sense for them to be there like, oh, our dead friend is in it, but we haven't got the heart to kill him, so we'll just launch him out in the escape pod.
Yeah.
And let space deal with him.
Yeah.
Then, a random necromorph, they were like, oh, we'll just launch the escape pod. When it's like, you know what you could do? You could open it, you all unload into it, go grab the other girl, grab a bunch of supplies, put it into the escape pod, ask Isaac to fix the comm systems, call for help, get into it and leave. You could have done all of that instead. But now with this, motivations make sense.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm there, like, remakes can help in that aspect. As long as the devs working behind it understand the dream and the creativity of the original and apply that to the remake.
Yeah.
Mm.
I want to talk about garbage remake.
Go on.
Startopia. Did you ever play Startopia?
I don't think I have.
So Startopia is basically a space station building game.
Okay.
You are an administrator of a space station, and you have to build it. It's basically a city building game to that
Like
aspect.
Skylines and stuff. Skylines.
A little bit, yeah. But obviously you're restricted
to the space station.
To the space station, you know, you've got to like open more sections and stuff. TLDR, brilliant game. Monkeyfoot Studios, RIP, did a fantastic job of it.
Yeah.
You know, they did a good job of making the game stylistically work with the tech that they had. This is a 2001 game, and it's a game that I can still boot today, and as long as I don't, you know, make it a super high resolution, because resolution scaling wasn't a thing in 2001, I still think it looks good. Enough, anyway.
Yeah.
You know, textures are a bit washy, but it's a 2001 game.
Of course.
I don't care. A studio tried to remake it, and did remake it, and called it Space-Based Startopia. And they tried to remake it entirely. Like, they didn't take any of the old source from Monkeyfoot, probably because it doesn't exist. They did a terrible job of it.
Mm-hmm.
Buggy. I didn't mind that they tried to change things about how the game worked, but it just felt kind of soulless.
Yeah.
It was really strange. Like, the original Startopia, you have only 10 missions. That's literally the entire game. There's a multiplayer mode that doesn't work, which is actually hilarious. They tried to patch it 1 billion times and it just never worked. If you pause the game, that's it. You're stuck in pause.
What?
Yeah.
It's a remake.
No. This is the original.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have made that more clear. No, the original. They tried to patch it a bunch of times. But yeah, if you pause during a multiplayer game, then that's it. You're stuck. You have to just restart, and you have to start the game again. Again, 2001 game, multiplayer, like over a LAN. We're talking about now.
Yeah.
So network multiplayer, not that common. None of that in the remake. There isn't a multiplayer mode, as far as I can tell. The original had a scripting system. You could make your own missions, and they documented everything. And they're like, "Here's what you got to do." It's a bit janky. Worked. Remake, nothing. And they have the goal to charge like, how much is it at the moment? I'm gonna look. 35 quid.
Oof.
35 quid for this game. Didn't even release with all the missions. Like, not all remakes are good.
I think that goes back to our thing earlier as well of how much the game costs.
Mm.
I think with a remake, I think the cost comes into it even more for me at that point.
Yeah.
Because if I paid, especially because they were charging 70 quid for Last of Us Part 1, if I had paid 70 quid for that and I'd played the original Last of Us and I'd played that one again and it was just the same game, but like just basically they'd done all the graphics, I would have been like, why did I pay £70 for that? But with the Dead Space one, I feel like even if I haven't played the original game because it's too scary for me, but even if I played that one, I feel like that I could justify spending £50 on a remake for that.
Yeah.
Because of all the stuff you've said they've added. Because I've even heard they added this hacking system, and they're like, there's certain points in the game where you need to like decide through like hacking if you're gonna have the lights on and the life support turned off, so you can see everything, but you've got to worry about your oxygen levels running out at some point if you spend too long in that section, or you can have the life support on and turn all the lights off, and it was like, so you can't see anything, you don't know where anything is.
Do you have like a torch or anything?
Oh yeah, so an inbuilt torch on your plasma cutter and all your weapons.
There's like
you have to aim.
Stuff could be anywhere, you don't know.
Yeah.
But you're not going to run out of oxygen. So that's decent, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that adds a whole new like different experience to it.
Adds new tension and stuff to it.
And like even the Final Fantasy one as well. Like, you know, you pay 60 quid for it, but you're getting a different experience than the original. If it was just the original turn-based combat.
My example as well with the Final Fantasy VII remake that I liked is once you get to the one section where you're in the massive building, the Shinra building, you get like you meet this guy and he's basically like, oh, I've tried making combat AI, so you can go up against all of these different like enemies and bosses that you've already fought, and you can fight bosses that are specific to the combat AI and go up against them. And it allowed you to do like things of where they put Bahamut, so the massive dragon god, in it. There was like a disc to summon, I believe.
Sure.
But they were there like you can fight him in this combat AI room, and if you beat him, I think you earn that summon as well.
Cool.
There's clips of people on YouTube being there like, oh, I'm using just Tifa. I've told that all of the other party members not to go into this fight. I'm using just Tifa. I'm going up against the hardest boss in the game. Section never existed in the original game because there was no reason for the section to be there.
Okay.
So I'm there like, again, it's that class is a remake because there's something new in there for you to experience.
I think remakes are also, we're glossing over the fact that sometimes remakes are for very specific people. It's either the people who really love those games and want to play them again, or someone who's never played that game. Because some remakes and some remasters, that's why they're really helpful for me, because there's some stuff that I just never played.
I was going to ask, you know Assassin's Creed 3, did they remaster it or remake it?
Remaster.
Cool.
It's still the same game. You can still tell it's very much, they just... that's where I think a remaster sits for me, is taking a console game and putting it up to what the PC standard was at the time. It's all they did. Most console remasters, that's all it is, man. With Assassin's Creed 3 remaster, they did actually redo a lot of the textures.
Okay.
And they changed the lighting and everything like that. So it looks different to what the PC version should look like.
Okay.
But like a lot of like the Darksiders games, I played 1 and 2 remastered, and honestly, it doesn't look any different to
the original PC.
To the original. Like the only difference is that on the console version, like things might not have looked as clear.
Yeah.
It's just things look crystal clear now. That's all it is, really. Maybe the colors are a bit more vibrant, like, but
yeah,
that's it. But like, I think that's where like remasters and remakes come in good for us, because I never played Darksiders 1 and 2 and the original. But I heard how good they were, and then when they released a remaster, and especially when I saw all 3 games for 15 quid, I was like, yes, go on then.
Yeah.
And I bought it and I played it, and I was like, oh, that's really good. I should have played that when I was younger.
Yeah.
I would love that. So I think remakes are really good. Remakes and remasters are really good for people who haven't played them. But I think they need to justify, if they want to get a broader audience, the people that did play them, I think they need to really justify actually being a remake or a remaster.
Yeah.
They need to like actually put, because again, it's the whole thing of someone who hasn't played it before isn't going to play the game and go, they changed that. What's the point of that? They go, like, someone who never played I never played the original Final Fantasy VII. I would have played through that game, and I would have gone, I wouldn't have been like, what are these ghosts messing up the story for?
Yeah.
Stand out. I wouldn't have noticed. I would have just been like, oh, okay, because they're like, oh, we need to fight Destiny and stuff like that. And the whole like cleverness,
Final Fantasy.
the whole cleverness of them, like the ghost coming in and like trying to change the story to what the original was, would have been lost on me. I would have just been like, oh yeah, they're fighting Destiny, Final Fantasy. I wouldn't have cared. But someone who played the original game, they can look at that like Lincoln and be like, that's really cool. That's really clever. Again, like I never played the original Dead Space, so I'm not going to play through that and go, why is Isaac speaking?
Yeah.
Why they change that for? What's the point? Like, But like someone who again played the original. But if I, again, if I did play the original Last of Us, but if I played the new one and I hadn't played the original, I would have been like, oh, that was good.
Yeah.
70 quid? I don't know. But because I played the original, if I go and play that one, I'd be like, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they need to really justify it, because again, the people that haven't played it aren't going to notice that anything's been changed. But the people who have played the original are going to really notice if nothing's been changed.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to, like, I find that it would really annoy me if I played a remake and it was the exact same thing.
That's how you get review bombed on the Steam reviews.
Yeah. Right, I think we've got to wrap up in just a minute, so I'll give a quick shout out to the remaster of Quake.
Okay.
Because the dev team, I don't know which dev team did it, but there was a dev team that remastered Quake. And I think actually still used the same source. And, just patched the engine and made it capable of other things. They did a really good job of upscaling things and still making it look faithful to how it looked originally. There's still some pixelated parts. It just looks stylistic more than a limitation of the engine at the time.
Yeah.
It's a remaster. Anyone who already owned Quake on Steam got it for free.
Ooh.
And the game is still only £8 on Steam. And you're still talking about 4 episodes of a first-person shooter that was, pretty damn good at the time. So, just shout out to them, because that's cool as.
See, because that dev team had to do a lot of work, and they're selling that for £8 on Steam. That's my example of being there, like, that's quality product. And that is really good.
Yeah.
I would buy it.
I think it might be Night Dive Studios who worked on it.
Quick shout out. Screw the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy remake.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody liked that. I didn't play it. Like, I saw the reviews just saying it was trash, and I'd been playing San Andreas, the original, on PC anyway. Like, it still works. So just play that. Play the originals.
We free here say that Rockstar needs to make GTA 6 already. Stop wasting time on remakes.
But you know what was odd about the remakes? They didn't even use Rockstar's own engine.
No.
I
They
forget
used an
if it was
AI.
Unreal. Pardon?
But they used an AI to crack. That's why there was so much wrong with it. Why there was like, you'd go to a certain part of the map and there's just a hole in the floor. Because they used an AI to do it all.
Yeah, I don't know if it was 100% of it, but I think it was like a lot of the changing like textures and stuff.
Oh, there's like an AI for like the
map modeling?
Yeah, like the map modeling.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff
all the
like that.
geometry. Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, so we went back in and like touched it up, but obviously they just missed parts.
Yeah. It's the problem with using a tool like that. You'll never see all of the mistakes that it makes. Anyway, that is all we have time for. Thanks for tuning into the Breakfast Wrap Up. We have been your hosts. I'm Dom.
Liam.
Lincoln.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time.